John Yi was born in 1921 in a small farming village about 300 miles from Kunming, China. When he was a child, he did his best to learn English while wars between ferocious warlords spread around the country. When he was 13, he had an opportunity to go to Hong Kong to obtain future schooling in Western educational schools. In 1937, Japan invaded Hong Kong and his school was shut down. He made his best judgment to go back to his hometown, Kunming, and stay with his family. During the Japanese attacks in his hometown, he helped his family and neighbors escape from relentless bombing. No matter how harsh his life was, he tried his best to continue self-education. On December 21, 1941, 12 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the American volunteer group, led by General Claire L. Chennault, who was recruited by Chiang Kai-shek to bring the Chinese Air Force up to speed, arrived in Kunming.
Flying Tigers, the famous American volunteer group, wing their way across China for the last time as volunteers. For 8 months, these Chinese signs have been the only insignia of the most spectacular and efficient fighting force in aviation history. Now, wearing the emblem of their native land, the U.S. Air Force, they become regular officers with American flying forces fighting in China. Leader of the volunteers, Brigadier General Chennault, now promoted to command all American flying forces in China. Here he outlines the field of operations. Clearing the skies for much-needed supplies. Supplies which in turn are exchanged for the valuable raw products of China. Losing no time, the new command plots the strategy of attack. By an elaborate far-flung system of Chinese listening posts, word is flashed, Japanese planes on the way, and the red ball goes up over the field. Signal for pilots to take to their ships. The Flying Tigers going into action for the first time in the uniforms of Uncle Sam. Newly assigned pilots go with the veterans. Schooled in the fighting tactics, Chennault has proven superior. Roaring aloft, they seek the enemy, their flying generals still at the controls. Mapping the aerial raid, the Japs fear above all. American Flying Tigers.
John made the best response to his nation to volunteer as an interpreter. He joined AVG and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Chinese Air Force. The decision he made at this time changed the entire course of his life. In 1944, as World War II was nearing its end, he was ordered to Biloxi, Mississippi, to serve as a classroom interpreter for the Aircraft Mechanics School at Keesler Field. After completing the mission, due to personal illness, he stayed for medical treatments. He grasped the best timing, filing in a petition, and was granted to stay in the U.S. He went to work in the shipping department at Samsonite and got to know the company's general manager. The GM was friends with the Dean of Academic Affairs at the University of Denver, and as luck would have it, the Dean just happened to be the brother of a missionary he had known in Kunming. With the best luck, he arranged a foreign student scholarship. In 1955, nearly 20 years after leaving school to defend his native land, he received his degree in history. He was the first Asian naturalized citizen to become an educator in the Aurora Public School system. As the head of the Social Studies Department, he was the first person to introduce Asian history and Chinese language into the Colorado high school curriculum. As an educator, he has done his best to bury the seeds for mutual understanding between his native country, China, and the U.S. In 1987, due to his efforts, his hometown Kunming became a sister city to Denver.
The first time I traveled with John to Kunming was in 1985. And at that time, I wasn't personally involved in the committee, but I was aware that he was at that time laying some groundwork with officials in Denver and I believe with officials in Kunming to establish a sister city relationship. And in the mid-80s, China had not been opened for very long to the West, and people in Denver had an interest in perhaps there being a relationship, and so John became the natural vehicle. And on that trip, it was amazing to see him in action and to see him in his native hometown where he was so respected by people, you know, very busy making those connections. And then shortly after we got back in 1986, he worked with Denver officials and Mayor Pena, and they arranged then for a signing with officials from Kunming, and the sister city relationship was established.
He facilitated receiving the gift of the bronze peacock sculpture by Chinese famous artist Yuan Xiaochen from Kunming to Denver. The sculpture is entitled "Good Fortune is Here to Stay" and is located at the Denver Zoo near the edge of Carousel Meadow. In 1999, the International Horticultural Expo was held in Kunming. John Yi was 78. He ran around the Denver Botanic Gardens and mayoral office for support to build a display in the expo. He raised funds to ship seeds for columbines and other flowers to Kunming. He said that China would become an important economy in the coming century and insisted that Denver needed to plant some seeds for the future. After retiring from teaching, he devoted his time to building a firm relationship between Denver and Kunming. He organized at least 10 groups of people in Denver to visit China. He did his best to shorten the cultural differences between the two countries. John interpreted not just languages, but cultural philosophy. When he was interviewed by a local newspaper to discuss his perspective of the relationship between the U.S. and China, he said, "Americans need to understand Chinese history and culture before leaping to conclusions. If you expect China to be democratic fast, you're expecting a miracle. Democracy is a way of life. It is not a slogan." When he was young, he experienced the cruelties of the wars in China. When he was 30, he witnessed the most important social revolutions in the U.S., the Civil Rights Movement and Vietnam War. He is a living history, a book of wisdom and knowledge for all. He has dedicated his life as an ambassador, promoting cultural understanding to build friendly relationships between the U.S. and China. He is John Yi. It is CACEN's honor to present the Lifetime Achievement Award to John Yi, a 2011 Asian American Hero of Colorado.